As amazing as Obi-Wan Kenobi was, and how desperately fans are asking for another season despite the limited series status, things look a little differently when you find out what the plans were before Obi-Wan Kenobi was a limited series. Would he have had someone to talk to? Would there have been more serious subjects? Let's see what Stuart Beattie has to say about his scrapped plans. First up, Cody's character arc. In an interview with The Direct, writer Stuart Beattie opened up about all the plans he had for Obi-Wan Kenobi when it was still going to be a trilogy and he was writing the script. And when he was asked whether there were any legacy characters in his script, Beattie confirmed there were and singled out Cody. The writer really wanted to explore Cody's character arc and show exactly how he transformed from where he was in Revenge of the Sith to Obi-Wan Kenobi. That would have included the revelation that Cody had his inhibitor chip removed. With the chip removed, all external control would have been removed as well. That would mean that he would no longer try to hunt Obi-Wan upon seeing him, even though he is a Jedi. It's quite the character growth to go from someone who lived to try and kill Obi-Wan and now devoting his entire life to protecting him instead. And just like Obi-Wan, Cody would be drowning in feelings of guilt. Wouldn't it be interesting to bring those two together? To give Obi-Wan someone to talk to? But Disney ultimately decided that no one needed him, and so Cody was cut out completely, and everyone was denied a chance to watch Cody's beautiful storyline. And boy, are there other things that have been taken away with Cody as well. Next up, Obi-Wan and Cody, best friends forever. Adding Cody to the story would have served another purpose, because Beattie was planning on doing exactly that, bring Obi-Wan and Cody together. Of course, Obi-Wan would need someone to talk to, and it would have been an interesting relationship to see evolve as well, which is exactly what Beattie thought. In Beattie's mind, the two would be bickering all the time, just like a grumpy old married couple. But in the end, the two do have quite a lot in common, and they would end up rather attached to each other. And when Obi-Wan has to leave Tatooine, instead of leaving Luke to his own devices like in the Disney Plus series, Obi-Wan leaves Cody in charge of Luke, which would have opened up a whole lot of fun B-story to keep cutting away to. Cody, in Beattie's world, really is a fun character, but one who's racing against the clock because he's aging twice as fast, which makes his attempts at atonement for the worst thing he's ever done in his life even more tragic, but makes for an interesting and powerful arc to explore. Beattie was absolutely onto something there, and it's sad that none of it made it to the final cut of the series. Some things are better left unknown, don't you think? Following, Obi-Wan's surrender to the Force. Another thing that we and Cody missed out on was how Beattie was going to use Cody to make Obi-Wan realize how disconnected he was from the Force. He'd drawn from Superman 2 for the key climactic moment. Obi-Wan is not thinking clearly and is forcing his will upon this child, pressuring him to be the greatest Jedi ever and fix everything, which is maybe not the best way to go about it. Obi-Wan has lost his powers, just like Superman found himself human in Superman 2. He's mortal and terrified because he's the only one who knows. So here we have Obi-Wan, he can't mind read, and he can't sense that Cody's in the back alleys. All that stuff has been taken away, and all that's left is a desperate man. It would have opened up the road to that moment where Obi-Wan finally learns how to truly surrender to the will of the Force, which is the only way to connect with it. And that's how he'd get his powers back, which is almost what they ended up doing in the series, but not quite. It seems like Beattie isn't necessarily unhappy about the way it ended up being, but he would have liked to have done it differently, and the thought that we could have gotten Cody, storyline and all, but didn't, is still very sad. Next up, there is something about a group of refugees that Beattie wanted to add in his movies, but Disney ended up cutting. Can you guess what it is? And what would Obi-Wan see if he were to get a vision? Who could have been chosen to be Obi-Wan Kenobi's opposition if not the Grand Inquisitor? If you don't want to miss out on what the answers are, stick around and you'll find out. Let's start with the refugees and their religion. On a more serious note, Beattie also talked about an element that was initially in his script that he had felt was very important, but ultimately ended up getting cut. In Beattie's film version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, there was supposed to be a group of refugees that have their own religion. Obi-Wan ends up falling in with these refugees that are fleeing from the Empire and helps them get away from the Empire, luring Darth Vader away, that kind of fun stuff. The refugees believe in a goddess that controls all their lives, and in the end, they all realize that it's the Force. Disney decided to leave religion out of the equation, which isn't that weird of a decision. Naturally, controversy is better prevented than mitigated, but it's also a missed opportunity to allow fans for some interesting topics of conversations through a shared interest. Even if the purpose of shows like these is ultimately entertainment, playing it on the safe side of these opportunities often leaves fans unsatisfied. And now we know that Beattie had everything planned out to make this storyline work, we can only hope that Beattie will have more to say in future projects. Following, we have Obi-Wan's vision. Part of the storyline that Beattie had in mind for the refugees was that the leader was supposed to test Obi-Wan through the Force, and those tests included a very intense vision where Obi-Wan would be sent back to Mustafar. In Beattie's plans, Obi-Wan was taken to Tau, the lead refugee woman, and she takes him to their sacred shrine and she says, "Put your hands on here and close your eyes and concentrate, and let the goddess talk to you." But when he opens his eyes, he's back on Mustafar completely bewildered. That's when he sees a guy in a dark robe and a red lightsaber. Of course, Obi-Wan thinks it's Anakin and calls out his name, but it's not Anakin, it's Luke. Beattie would even have brought in a de-aged Mark Hamill, completing the immersive experience and adding that extra bit of history that can be so effective. The thing is that Luke would attack Obi-Wan, and suddenly they're mirroring The Empire Strikes Back. Beatty wanted to show Obi-Wan in a brutally honest way what would become of Luke if he kept training him and couldn't stop himself from putting all his guilt on him. Luke will turn to the dark side. It would be a beautiful way to further Obi-Wan's character arc, and it would ultimately be what leads him to becoming the Ben Kenobi as he is in A New Hope, because it's how Beatty would have made Obi-Wan fully grasp that he has to let it go or else. And now, Reva was supposed to be the enemy. In Beatty's script, he had put Reva as Obi-Wan's opposition, and instead of using other Inquisitors like the Grand Inquisitor or the Fifth Brother, Beatty had been planning on including a group of clone troopers that were basically like the US Marshals. In other words, they were all Cody, all speaking in his voice. They would all be veterans of the Clone Wars, know Obi-Wan and the Jedi they were hunting, and they would all still have their deadly biochips inside them. Beatty's clones would have been ruthless, never missing when they shot. In his mind, this would be a group of 10 clones commanded by a guy named Commander Jet, and that's who Reva would use. And they would all die, every single one of them, and Reva was the most important one, of course. Why did Beatty want Reva to be the one to perish? Because Beatty likes the idea of characters who have been killed to stay killed, and as the Grand Inquisitor appears in Star Wars Rebels, which obviously takes place later in the timeline, Beatty could not have allowed him to die in a way that would have him remain dead, and that's a little bit against the writer's principles. He's rather disappointed that, these days, no character actually stays dead, which takes away from the jeopardy of the story, and maybe he's right. What do you think? And that's all we have for now. What do you think of the picture that Beatty had in his mind of how Obi-Wan Kenobi should have been? Do you think the series would have been better off being a trilogy? How different things could have been if Solo had been done better? Let us know in the comments what you think, and thanks for watching.